For thousands of years, humanity has looked at the stars and imagined them as destinations, places we could reach, places we could live, places where the story of Earth might continue under another sun. But there is a terrifying problem hidden inside that dream. The stars are not simply far away, they are almost impossibly far away. Even the closest star system is so distant that, with today's technology, a journey there could take thousands of years. Not one lifetime, not 10 lifetimes, but entire generations of human beings born, living and dying inside the same spacecraft without ever seeing the world their ancestors were trying to reach. This is the idea of a generation ship, a giant vessel built not only to travel, but to become a moving civilization, a closed world in the dark carrying people, plants, water, air, memories, and hope across the empty space between stars. But what sounds like humanity's greatest achievement may also be one of its most frightening ideas. Because inside a generation ship, Earth would become a story. The destination would become a promise, and the people born during the journey would inherit a mission they never chose. Tonight on Stellar Depth, we explore the terrifying reality of generation ships, the impossible distances between stars, the psychological weight of living inside a machine forever, and the haunting possibility that humanity could travel for centuries, only to never arrive. The first terrifying truth about generation ships is that they are not really spacecraft. Not in the way we usually imagine spacecraft. They are not sleek capsules launched for a mission lasting days. They are not stations orbiting a planet. They are not rockets carrying astronauts to a destination and then bringing them home. A generation ship would be something far stranger. It would be a world, a moving world, a sealed world, a fragile human civilization wrapped in metal, drifting through the dark between stars. And the reason such a ship exists at all is because the stars are not merely far away, they are brutally far away. When we look at the night sky from Earth, stars seem close together. They appear scattered above us like lights on a ceiling. Some shine brighter than others. Some form patterns our ancestors turned into constellations. Some feel familiar because we have seen them since childhood. But that beauty hides the scale. The stars are separated by distances so enormous that the human mind almost refuses to accept them. The closest star system to our Sun is Alpha Centauri, more than 4 light-years away. That means light itself, moving at the fastest speed allowed by the universe, takes more than 4 years to cross that distance. 4 years for light. But a spacecraft does not move like light. The fastest machines humanity has ever built would still need thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of years to reach even the nearest stars, depending on their speed and trajectory. That single fact changes everything, because a normal mission cannot survive that kind of distance. No crew can simply pack supplies for 10,000 years. No astronaut can remain alive long enough to see both departure and arrival. No ordinary spacecraft can function like a plane, a ship, or a train. Interstellar travel forces us into an idea that feels almost impossible. If humans cannot live long enough to complete the journey, then the journey must be inherited. One generation leaves Earth. Another is born inside the ship. Another grows old without ever seeing Earth. Another learns about the destination from lessons, maps, simulations, and stories. And somewhere far in the future, perhaps centuries later, descendants of the original crew might finally approach another star. This is the generation ship. Not a vehicle carrying passengers, a civilization carrying itself. At first, the idea sounds majestic. It sounds like the greatest adventure humanity could ever attempt. A huge vessel leaving the solar system, filled with forests, farms, water systems, homes, schools, hospitals, laboratories, and people chosen to carry human life beyond the sun. From the outside, it might look beautiful. A glowing arc moving through the dark. A human-made island crossing the ocean between stars. A final proof that Earth's story does not have to end on Earth. But inside, the reality would be much more difficult. Because a generation ship would have to do something no machine has ever done. It would have to keep a society alive for longer than many nations have existed. Not just a few astronauts. Not just a small crew trained for sacrifice, but a living community. Children would be born there. Families would form there. People would work, argue, love, age, teach, and die there. Every human emotion would unfold inside the same sealed environment, and outside there would be nothing. No planet nearby, no emergency landing, no resupply, no rescue mission, no fresh air, no open sea, no horizon, no natural sky, only stars. This is what makes generation ships so terrifying. The ship is not travelling through space. The ship is separating its people from every natural support system humanity has ever known. On Earth, survival is supported by a planet. We rarely feel this directly, because the planet does so much for us quietly. It gives us air pressure. It gives us gravity. It gives us water cycles, sunlight, soil, weather, and an enormous biosphere that repairs itself in ways we still do not fully understand. A generation ship would need to replace all of that. It would need to recycle air perfectly, recycle water perfectly, grow food reliably, control temperature, manage waste, protect against radiation, maintain gravity, or imitate it through rotation, repair machines for centuries, store knowledge, preserve social order, prevent disease, prevent conflict, prevent collapse, and it would need to do this without Earth. That is the part that changes the dream into a nightmare, because Earth is not only the place we live. Earth is the system that makes living possible. A generation ship would be an attempt to build a tiny artificial Earth inside a machine. And artificial Earths are fragile. Every part of the ship would depend on every other part. The farms would depend on water. The water would depend on purification systems. The purification systems would depend on power. The power systems would depend on maintenance. Maintenance would depend on trained people. Trained people would depend on education. Education would depend on culture. Culture would depend on stability. Nothing would be separate. A failure in one system could spread into another, then another. A damaged crop cycle could become a food shortage. A food shortage could become social tension. Social tension could become political conflict. Political conflict could threaten maintenance. Poor maintenance could threaten life support. The ship would not merely be a machine, it would be an ecosystem. And ecosystems are difficult to control even on Earth, where nature has had billions of years to build balance. A generation ship would need to create balance from engineering. That may be one of the hardest tasks imaginable. Think about food. On a normal space mission, food can be packed before launch. It can be stored, counted, rationed, and eaten. But a generation ship cannot carry centuries of food for thousands of people in simple containers. It would need to produce food continuously. That means farms. But farming in space is not like farming on Earth. There is no soil unless you bring it or make a substitute. There is no rain, no natural sunlight unless the ship captures it or recreates it. No insects unless they are part of the system. No open atmosphere, no natural seasons, no rivers, no wide landscape where one bad harvest can be balanced by another region. The ship's farms would be enclosed, controlled, monitored, and vulnerable. Plants would grow under artificial light or redirected starlight. Nutrients would be recycled. Water would move through pipes. Waste would become resource. Every leaf, every root, every fungus, every microbe would matter. A disease among crops could be dangerous. A failure in lighting could be dangerous. A mistake in nutrient balance could be dangerous. A contamination event could be dangerous. The ship would need diversity, backup systems, seed banks, and deep biological knowledge just to feed its people. And food is only one layer. Water would be even more sacred. On Earth, water moves endlessly. It evaporates, forms clouds, falls as rain, flows through rivers, freezes, melts, fills oceans, enters bodies, leaves bodies, and returns again. The planet is a vast recycling machine. A generation ship would need to imitate that cycle inside walls. Every drop would matter. Water used for drinking, cooking, washing, growing crops, cooling machines, and supporting life would need to be recovered again and again. Wastewater would become clean water. Humidity would be collected. Urine would be processed. Ice reserves might be stored. Nothing could be wasted casually. The people aboard would grow up with a relationship to water completely different from ours. On Earth, many of us turn on a tap without thinking. On a generation ship, water would be civilization itself. Children might be taught from their earliest years that water is not just a substance, it is inheritance, it is memory. It is a closed circle that must never be broken. Air would be the same. Every breath would be part of the ship's economy. Oxygen would need to be produced, carbon dioxide removed, trace gases monitored, humidity controlled, pressure maintained. Plants might help, but plants alone would not be enough unless the system was enormous and carefully balanced. Machines would assist biology. Biology would assist machines. A person breathing inside a generation ship would be connected to algae tanks, forests, filters, pumps, sensors, valves, power lines, and generations of engineers who kept those systems alive. A breath would no longer feel simple. It would be a product of civilization, and this is where the psychological reality begins to appear. People born aboard a generation ship would never know Earth directly. They would never stand under a real sky, never feel natural wind moving across open land, never swim in an ocean with no wall at the edge, never watch weather forming beyond the horizon, never hear birds in a forest unless these birds were carried aboard, never see a mountain except in recordings or artificial landscapes. For them, the ship would be normal. Corridors would be streets. Hydroponic gardens would be fields. Observation windows would be sky. Artificial lights would be sunrise. Rotating habitats would be gravity. The hum of machinery would be background silence. Earth would become history, not home, and that creates a moral problem that cannot be solved easily. The first generation may choose to leave, but the second generation does not choose. The children born inside the ship inherit a mission decided before they existed. They inherit the risks, the destination, the rules, the limited space, the closed society, and the impossibility of return. They are born into motion. Their lives are shaped by a decision made by ancestors they may never understand. This may become one of the deepest conflicts aboard a generation ship. What if later generations no longer want the mission? What if they question why they are travelling toward a star they have never seen with their own eyes? What if they begin to resent Earth? What if they no longer believe arrival is worth the sacrifice? What if they decide the ship itself is home and the destination is unnecessary? A generation ship would need more than engines. It would need meaning strong enough to survive centuries. That is terrifying because meaning is fragile. A mission that inspires the first generation may feel like a prison to the fifth. A destination that once seemed sacred may become abstract. The original purpose may be distorted, forgotten, or transformed into myth. People aboard might tell stories about Earth the way ancient cultures told stories about paradise, exile, or creation. Some may worship it, some may reject it, some may doubt it ever existed as described, some may believe the destination is salvation, others may believe the destination is a lie. This is not fantasy. It is how human cultures work. Over long periods, stories change, institutions change, languages change, values change, memories become symbols. Now imagine that happening inside a sealed ship where there is nowhere else to go. A generation ship would have politics. It would have disagreements. It would have social classes unless carefully prevented. It would have leadership struggles. It would have young people rebelling against older rules. It would have people who want more freedom than the ship can physically provide. But freedom inside a generation ship has limits. On Earth, a person can leave a town, move to another country, live alone, travel, disappear into a city, or choose a different landscape. On a generation ship, there is no outside. Every conflict remains inside the same vessel. Every social fracture becomes dangerous because the community cannot simply separate into distant regions. The ship is finite, its resources are finite, its habitable volume is finite. This means that social stability becomes as important as life support. A broken society could be as deadly as a broken engine. The designers of a generation ship would need to think not only like engineers, but like philosophers, teachers, psychologists, doctors, farmers, architects, historians, and guardians of culture. They would need to ask impossible questions. How many people are needed to maintain a healthy population? How much space does a human mind need? How do you prevent boredom across generations? How do you preserve truth? How do you handle crime in a place where exile is impossible? How do you govern a society that cannot afford chaos? How do you teach children to care about a destination they may never see? Every answer creates another problem. Too much control could turn the ship into a prison. Too much freedom could threaten survival. Too much tradition could suffocate change. Too much change could erase the mission. The generation ship would have to balance stability and adaptation for centuries. That may be harder than crossing the distance itself, because engines follow physics. Humans do not. Humans dream, fear, forget, rebel, love, grieve, invent, and misunderstand. We carry hope, but also conflict. We can cooperate beautifully, and we can destroy systems we depend on. A generation ship would compress all of humanity's strengths and weaknesses into one sealed world. There would be no room for the illusion that technology alone can save us. Technology might build the ship, but only culture could keep it alive. And even if everything works, even if the air stays breathable, the water keeps cycling, the farms keep producing, the society remains stable, and the engines continue pushing through the dark, the greatest problem still waits ahead. the destination. Because after centuries of travel, after generations of sacrifice, after thousands of lives spent inside the ship, there is no guarantee that the new world will be ready for them. The target planet may not be habitable. The data from Earth may have been incomplete. The star may be more active than expected. The atmosphere may be toxic. The surface may be frozen, dry, unstable, or hostile. There may be no easy place to land. There may be no second chance. Imagine the horror of that. A civilization spends centuries crossing the dark. Children are born and die for a promised world. The ship becomes old. Resources become limited. The mission becomes legend. And then, at last, the destination appears. A planet beneath an alien sun. Blue, perhaps, or red, or white with ice, or wrapped in clouds. The people gather around screens and windows. They see the world their ancestors dreamed of, and slowly the instruments reveal the truth. It is not safe. It was never safe. The journey has not ended. It has only delivered them to another problem. This is why generation ships are among the most haunting ideas in all of space exploration. They are not terrifying because they are impossible to imagine. They are terrifying because they are possible enough to dream about, but dangerous enough to question. They ask whether humanity can build a world that moves. They ask whether a mission can survive longer than memory. They ask whether people can inherit a destiny without losing themselves. They ask whether the stars are destinations or traps of distance, and in the silence between stars a generation ship would keep moving. Lights glowing in its windows, farms breathing under artificial suns, children learning the names of oceans they will never touch, elders remembering stories told by elders before them, engines pushing gently against the dark. Behind it, Earth would shrink into history. Ahead, the destination would remain uncertain, and inside humanity would face the strangest truth of all. To reach the stars, we may first have to become a world without a sky. The second terrifying truth about generation ships is not the distance outside, it is the life inside. Because once the ship leaves Earth, the journey stops being an expedition and becomes a condition of existence. The people aboard are no longer simply passengers moving toward another star. They are members of a sealed civilization where every day, every rule, every relationship, and every future is shaped by the same fact. There is nowhere else to go. At first, the launch generation might live with a powerful sense of purpose. They remember Earth. They remember open skies, oceans, real sunlight, rain against windows, trees moving in the wind, cities glowing at night, and the feeling of standing outdoors without walls above them. For them, the ship is a sacrifice. They know what was left behind, but their children would not. Their children would grow up inside corridors, rotating habitats, artificial parks, classrooms, farms, observation decks, and carefully controlled living spaces. They would hear stories about Earth, but these stories would belong to someone else's memory. To the second or third generation, Earth may feel less like a place and more like an origin myth. A beautiful blue world their grandparents spoke of, a planet full of impossible things, open oceans, natural forests, weather, wild animals, rain, mountains so large they touched clouds, a sky that changed by itself. Imagine trying to explain rain to a child born inside a spacecraft. Water falling freely from the sky, not from pipes, not from recycling systems, not from storage tanks, not from misting equipment in a controlled garden, but from clouds. The child may understand the science. They may watch recordings. They may study Earth's water cycle in school, but understanding is not the same as memory. They would never know the smell of rain on warm soil. They would never feel wind change before a storm. They would never look at a horizon and understand that the world continues beyond what the eye can see. Their entire universe would have edges, walls, doors, bulkheads, decks, windows, schedules, systems. Even if the ship were enormous, it would still be finite, and the human mind knows confinement. At first, designers might try to fight this. They would build wide interior spaces, artificial landscapes, simulated skies, gardens, lakes, perhaps even forests under great domes. They would use light cycles to imitate morning and evening. They would create seasons with temperature, color, and sound. They would design places where people could gather, rest, work, and feel something close to normal. But imitation has limits. A fake sky does not have weather. A projected horizon cannot truly be reached. An artificial forest is still part of a machine. A lake inside a ship has boundaries everyone understands. The people aboard might love these places. They might become emotionally attached to them. A child might grow up with a favourite tree in a habitat garden, a favourite bench near an observation window, a favourite corridor where the floor curves gently with rotation. But beneath all of it, the truth remains. The ship is closed. And if a society remains closed long enough, the mind begins to change around that closure. Some people may adapt beautifully. They may find meaning in duty, education, maintenance, art, family, and the long mission. They may feel proud to be part of a journey larger than one lifetime. Others may not. Some may experience the ship as a prison built before they were born, not because anyone locked them inside intentionally, but because the universe outside gives no alternative. There is no countryside to escape into, no ocean to cross, no neighbouring city where one can begin again, no wilderness where a person can disappear for a while and return changed. Every personal crisis remains inside the same world. Every argument, every heartbreak, every failure, every mistake, every reputation, every family history, all of it exists within a limited population that cannot simply spread across a planet. On Earth, distance can heal. On a generation ship, distance may barely exist. This could make social life intense in ways we can hardly imagine. Everyone might depend on everyone else indirectly. The person repairing oxygen filters matters to the person teaching children. The person growing food matters to the person maintaining engines. The person making policy matters to the person managing waste. The person studying old star maps matters to the child who may one day arrive. No one is truly separate. That sounds beautiful in theory. In practice, it could become exhausting. A generation ship would need community, but too much unavoidable community can feel suffocating. Privacy would become precious. Silence would become precious. Personal space would become a luxury, perhaps even a political issue. How much room does each person deserve? How many children can a family have? Who decides population limits? Who receives larger quarters? Who works dangerous jobs? Who controls access to gardens, recreation areas, education, or leadership? On Earth, these questions are already difficult. Inside a ship where resources are measured and every choice affects survival, they become explosive. A generation ship might need strict rules for population control. Too many people could overwhelm food systems, water recycling, air processing, medical care, and living space. Too few people could threaten genetic diversity, labor capacity, and cultural continuity. That means one of the most personal parts of human life, having children, could become a matter of ship survival. This is terrifying, because a civilization cannot feel free if its future births are controlled only by calculations. Yet a generation ship cannot survive if reproduction is completely unmanaged. So the society aboard would face a moral pressure no normal civilization has ever faced at that scale. Love, family, biology, personal desire, and survival mathematics would all collide. A couple may want a child, but the ship may say no. A generation may need more technicians, farmers, doctors, engineers, teachers, or genetic diversity. And the ship may encourage births for reasons that feel more like planning than freedom. A person may be born not only as a child, but as part of a demographic requirement. This is where the dream becomes deeply uncomfortable. The ship would need people to be free enough to remain human, but disciplined enough not to destroy the fragile system keeping them alive. That balance may be nearly impossible, and even if social order holds, another danger grows quietly across generations. Forgetting. Not simple forgetting like losing a name or a date. Cultural forgetting. The first generation remembers why the mission began. They carry the emotional fire of departure. They saw Earth vanish behind them. They understood the stakes. But after 100 years, the launch becomes history. After 200 years, it becomes ancient history. After 300 years, it may become ritual. The original recordings may still exist. The documents may still be stored. The mission charter may still be taught. But words change meaning over time. A sentence written on Earth may be interpreted differently by people who have never known a planet. Even the word home may change. For the first generation, home is Earth. For the second, home is the ship, but Earth is family memory. For later generations, home may only mean the vessel. The destination itself may become strange. Imagine being told from childhood that your life exists because someday, descendants of your society must reach a planet around another star. You study it in school, you see simulations, you learn its expected orbit, atmosphere, gravity, climate, and risks. You attend ceremonies marking the distance travelled. You listen to elders speak of arrival as the great purpose. But you also know you may never see it. Your children may never see it. Maybe your grandchildren will not either. How long can a promise remain powerful when nobody alive can receive it? That is the psychological burden of a generation ship. Its goal may be too far ahead to feel real. Humans are not naturally built to serve outcomes centuries away. We can imagine them, write about them, and build institutions around them, but our emotions are anchored in immediate life. Family, safety, love, respect, fear, ambition, belonging. A mission that demands loyalty across centuries must somehow connect cosmic purpose to daily meaning. If it fails, people may stop caring, and if people stop caring, maintenance suffers first. That may sound small, but on a generation ship, maintenance is survival. Every filter changed on time, every seal inspected, every crop disease prevented, every educational system preserved, every emergency drill completed. All of it depends on a culture that believes the ship matters. A generation that loses faith may still live aboard the vessel, but it may no longer protect the future with the same seriousness. Systems could be neglected, standards could weaken, old procedures could become ceremonial rather than understood. People could perform tasks because tradition demands it, not because they truly grasp the danger. And that is when catastrophe becomes possible, not through one dramatic rebellion, but through slow decay of purpose. A generation ship could die from forgetfulness before it dies from space. To prevent that, the ship would need institutions designed to preserve knowledge with almost religious intensity. Schools would not simply educate children, they would protect civilization. Archives would not simply store information, they would preserve reality. Engineers would not simply fix machines, they would guard the conditions for human existence. Teachers may become some of the most important people aboard. Because if the next generation does not understand the ship eventually dies. Every child would need to learn not only history and science, but dependency. They would need to understand why air systems matter, why water cannot be wasted, why food production must be protected, why population balance matters, why certain zones are restricted, why old manuals must be read, why the mission cannot be treated like a normal society on a normal world. But there is danger in teaching too much fear. A society raised entirely around survival rules could become anxious, rigid, obedient, and emotionally fragile. A society taught too little could become careless. The ship would need to raise people who are both disciplined and imaginative, obedient in emergencies but free enough to innovate, loyal to the mission but not trapped in blind tradition. That is an extraordinarily difficult kind of human being to create, and the ship would need to create them again and again, generation after generation. Then comes another problem: identity. What would the people aboard call themselves? Would they still think of themselves as Earth humans? Would they identify by the ship's name? Would they divide into districts, decks, professions, families, or belief groups? Would people living near agricultural habitats feel different from those maintaining engines? Would command families gain prestige over time? Would technical knowledge become power? Would access to certain areas create hidden social classes? A generation ship may begin with carefully planned equality. But centuries are long, patterns form, privileges harden, stories justify them. A family that holds engineering knowledge for generations may become powerful. A group responsible for navigation may become respected, feared, or resented. Those who work in maintenance may feel they carry the real burden while others enjoy safer lives. Those in leadership may claim strict control is necessary. Younger generations may challenge them. The ship could develop politics unlike anything on Earth. Not based on land, because there is no land. Not based on natural resources in the usual sense, because all resources are internal. Not based on borders, because the world is a vessel. Politics would form around access, responsibility, information, reproduction, work, space, and interpretation of the mission. Who controls the archives? Who decides the truth about Earth? Who decides whether the destination is still valid? Who has authority during crisis? Can a person refuse assigned work if that work is essential? Can a group demand more freedom if freedom threatens stability? These are not side questions. They may decide whether the ship survives. And then, somewhere deep inside the journey, a generation may ask the most dangerous question of all. Why arrive? If the ship has functioned for centuries, if people are born there, love there, work there, create art there, bury their dead there, and understand its systems as their world, then arrival may not feel like salvation. It may feel like disruption. A planet is not automatically safer than the ship. A new world may have unfamiliar gravity, unknown microbes, dangerous weather, toxic chemistry, unstable terrain, or a climate that requires massive adaptation. Landing could be risky. Colonization could fail. The ship, however limited, is known. Some people may argue that the ship should remain in space, become permanent, continue traveling, orbit the new star without landing, use asteroids or comets for resources, transform from a mission into a wandering civilization. Others may insist that landing was the purpose from the beginning. This conflict could divide the entire society. After centuries of sacrifice, arrival itself could become controversial. That is one of the strangest possibilities of generation ships. The destination may be the thing that threatens the civilization built to reach it, because a journey long enough can create its own world, and a world does not always want to end. For people born aboard, the ship is not a waiting room. It is childhood, culture, memory, and identity. Leaving it for a planet may feel like leaving home forever. The first generation sacrifices Earth for the destination. The final generation may be asked to sacrifice the ship for the destination. Both are losses. And perhaps that is the true horror of travelling to the stars this way. No generation receives the whole dream. The first generation sees Earth, but not arrival. The middle generations see neither Earth nor arrival. The final generation may see arrival, but must carry the emotional weight of everyone who did not. What kind of celebration can fully honour centuries of people who lived and died in transit? What kind of planet can repay that? Imagine the final approach after hundreds of years. The new star grows brighter. The target planet becomes a disk, then a world. Clouds appear, continents perhaps, ice caps, storms, a new sky waiting below. The ship's population gathers in halls, gardens, classrooms, and observation chambers. Children are lifted onto shoulders. Elders weep. Engineers watch the instruments with hands that will not stop shaking. This is the moment their ancestors promised, but mixed with wonder would be grief. Every corridor of the ship carries names of people who never arrived. Every garden was planted by hands that turned to dust generations before. Every song, rule, festival, warning, and story exists because the journey consumed lives. Arrival would not erase the voyage. It would reveal its cost, and maybe some would look at the planet and feel joy. Others would feel anger. Others would feel fear. Others would look back into the ship and realize they are being asked to leave the only universe they have ever trusted. A generation ship, then, is not only a solution to distance. It is a machine that transforms humanity. It changes how people understand home, time, duty, freedom, childhood, memory, and destiny. It forces civilization to survive without a planet. It turns engineering into culture. It turns survival into tradition. It turns a destination into a belief. And somewhere in the endless dark between the star humanity left and the star humanity may never reach, the ship continues. Inside, babies cry beneath the artificial light. Students learn about oceans they cannot touch. Farmers grow food under engineered suns. Technicians listen to the quiet pulse of life support systems. Old people close their eyes remembering stories told by people who remembered Earth. Outside there is only distance. The ship moves forward, but no one aboard can truly know whether the journey will end in triumph, collapse, refusal, or disappointment. And that is what makes it terrifying. A generation ship does not simply ask whether humans can travel to another star. It asks whether a civilization can survive long enough to still want what its ancestors wanted. A generation ship would not only carry people, it would carry biology. That may sound obvious at first. Humans are living creatures, so any ship carrying humans is carrying life. But on a journey between stars, biology becomes far more complicated than bodies moving through space. A generation ship would need to carry an entire living system, not just passengers, not just food, not just seeds in storage, not just animals, plants, bacteria and water. It would need to carry balance, and balance is one of the hardest things in the universe to preserve. On Earth, life exists inside a vast ancient network. Forests breathe with the atmosphere. Oceans exchange gases with the sky. Microbes break down waste. Plants build oxygen and food from sunlight. Animals move nutrients through landscapes. Fungi connect roots beneath the soil. Rivers carry minerals. Rain resets the ground. Seasons change the rhythm of growth and decay. Most of this happens without human permission. Earth's biosphere is not perfect, but it is enormous. If one forest burns, another still breathes. If one crop fails, other regions may still grow food. If one river dries, another may continue flowing. The planet has space, redundancy, diversity, and time. A generation ship would not. It would be small by comparison, no matter how enormous it looked from the outside. Its biology would be compressed into a controlled interior where every living system would depend on design, monitoring, and constant correction. That is terrifying. Because life is not a machine. A machine can be built from parts that are expected to behave in certain ways. A valve opens, a pump moves liquid, a wire carries current, a sensor measures temperature. But biology adapts, it mutates, it spreads, it competes, it evolves, it surprises. A generation ship would have to manage not only engines and metal, but living things that change over time. Plants could behave differently after generations under artificial light. Microbes could evolve inside water systems. Fungi could invade food production areas. Bacteria could become resistant to treatments. Human immune systems could change in isolation. Viruses could circulate differently inside a closed population. On Earth, ecosystems are messy but resilient because they are large. Inside a ship, a small biological mistake could become enormous. Imagine a crop system designed to feed thousands of people. For decades it works. Leaves grow under carefully tuned lights. Nutrients move through liquid channels. Pollination is managed by machines or selected insects. Waste becomes fertilizer. The farms become the green heart of the ship. Then something changes. A fungus appears in one section. At first it is small, a patch on a leaf, a discoloration, a strange smell in the growing chamber. Technicians isolate the area, clean the surfaces, test the air, adjust humidity. But the ship is closed. The spores do not disappear into a wide world. They circulate. They hide inside filters. They cling to clothing. They move through ventilation. They find another plant, then another. Suddenly, food production is no longer a background system. It is a crisis. On Earth, a farmer can change fields, import food, use outside resources, or recover next season. On a generation ship, there is no outside harvest. There is only the ship's own capacity to keep producing. If the farms fail, the future begins to shrink. This is why a generation ship would need biological diversity. Not just one crop, not just one method, not just one source of nutrition. It would need many species, many storage systems, many ways to grow food, and many emergency reserves. But diversity takes space, and space on a generation ship is never free. Every square meter used for one purpose cannot be used for another. More farms mean less living space. More seed banks mean more storage. More animal systems mean more oxygen, water, waste, disease risk, and maintenance. More biological complexity means more ways for something to go wrong. Too little diversity creates fragility. Too much complexity creates instability. The ship would need to live in the narrow space between those dangers, and it would need to do so for centuries. Then there is the human body itself. A generation ship would ask human biology to do something it has never done before: continue across multiple generations away from Earth. This is not the same as astronauts spending months in orbit. It is not the same as a crew surviving a long mission and returning home. It is the complete relocation of human life into an artificial environment. The first children born aboard would become part of an experiment with no true precedent. How would pregnancy develop under artificial gravity? How strong would gravity need to be for healthy bones, muscles, organs, and nervous systems? Would a rotating habitat create subtle effects on balance and development? Would children raised under controlled light cycles develop normal sleep rhythms? Would their immune systems mature properly without Earth's full microbial diversity? Would their bodies adapt to the ship in ways that make planets harder to survive? These questions are not small. They define whether humanity could continue at all between stars. A generation ship would likely need some form of artificial gravity. Without it, long-term human health could suffer badly. Muscles weaken, bones lose density, fluid shifts affect the body, the cardiovascular system changes. On a normal mission, exercise can reduce some damage, but across generations the problem becomes deeper. A child cannot grow up healthy in an environment that slowly damages the structure of the body, so the ship might rotate. A giant habitat ring spinning slowly, creating outward force that feels like gravity along the floor. People could walk, run, sleep, grow plants, and raise families inside a curved world. But this kind of gravity is not exactly Earth's gravity. If the ring is too small or spins too quickly, people may feel strange effects when they move their heads or walk in certain directions. If the gravity is lower than Earth's, bodies may adapt differently. If different sections have different gravity levels, social and biological differences may emerge over generations. The ship would not only carry human bodies, it could gradually reshape them. After centuries, descendants born aboard may not be physically identical to the humans who left Earth. Not in a dramatic way at first, but subtly. Different bone density, different muscle development, different balance systems, different immune exposure, different relationships with light, space, and motion. If the destination planet has higher gravity than the ship, arrival could become physically painful or even dangerous. The people who spent generations traveling to reach a world may discover that their bodies are not prepared to live there. That possibility is haunting. A generation ship might deliver humans to another planet after centuries, only for those humans to find the new world too heavy. The ship that saved them could also have adapted them away from the place they hoped to settle. This is one of the hidden traps of long journeys. The environment that keeps you alive also changes what you become. Medical care would face the same problem. On Earth, medicine depends on enormous systems. Hospitals, laboratories, factories, specialists, supply chains, universities, research centers, and billions of people contribute to medical knowledge and production. A generation ship would need to compress as much of that as possible into a closed world. It would need doctors, surgeons, genetic counselors, dentists, pharmacists, biologists, mental health experts, emergency teams, medical manufacturing, sterile environments, diagnostic machines, training programs, archives, and it would need continuity, because the doctor who understands a rare condition will eventually die. The surgeon with decades of experience will be replaced by someone trained entirely aboard the ship. Every skill must be taught forward. Every generation must produce the next healers before the old ones are gone. Knowledge cannot skip a generation. If it does, the ship becomes more vulnerable. The same is true for medicine production. A generation ship cannot rely forever on pills packed from Earth centuries earlier. Some may degrade, some may be used up, some may become ineffective. The ship would need to produce medicines, sterilize equipment, manage infections, and perhaps even develop new treatments for problems that emerge in its unique environment. But biology will continue changing. A closed population has its own risks. Genetic diversity would need to be protected carefully. Too small a population could increase the risk of inherited disorders over time. Too little planning could make future generations more vulnerable. Too much planning could turn human reproduction into something cold and administrative. Even with enough people, the ship would need to watch genetic health across centuries. This does not mean controlling lives brutally, but it does mean that biology would become part of governance, education, and culture in a way that Earth societies rarely accept comfortably. The people aboard would know that their personal futures connect directly to the survival of the population. Love would still exist, family would still exist, choice would still matter. But beneath all of it, there would be the quiet awareness that the ship's bloodlines are finite. There is no outside population to mix with, no neighbouring civilization to merge into, no natural migration. Until arrival, the human future aboard is sealed. That seal changes everything. Even the microbes inside human bodies would matter. Every person carries a hidden world of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microscopic life. These communities help digest food, train the immune system, protect against disease, and influence health in ways science is still learning to understand. On Earth, our microbial worlds are constantly interacting with soil, animals, plants, air, water, other people, and environments. Inside a generation ship, that exchange would be limited. The ship would develop its own microbiome, its own invisible ecology of surfaces, vents, water lines, farms, bodies, waste systems, and air filters. Some microbes would be helpful, some harmless, some dangerous. Over decades and centuries, they would adapt to the ship just as humans do. This is one of the most overlooked possibilities. The ship itself could become biologically unique. Not sterile, not dead, but alive in a microscopic sense. Every wall, corridor, farm, cabin, and ventilation system could become part of a closed microbial planet. Keeping that microbial planet healthy may be just as important as keeping the engines running. Too much sterilization could damage useful microbial balance. Too little control could allow disease to spread. A closed environment might allow certain organisms to become persistent. Water systems could harbor biofilms. Air systems could spread allergens or pathogens. Food areas could become ecological battlegrounds. In a way, the generation ship would be less like a spaceship and more like a living body. It would have circulation, respiration, digestion, waste processing, immune defense, memory, a nervous system of sensors, a skeleton of structure, a skin of hull and shielding, and like a living body, it could become sick, not metaphorically, literally. A sick ship might have contaminated water, unstable crops, failing air quality, spreading microbes, weakened crew health, and systems slowly drifting away from safe balance. The terrifying thing is that such sickness might not appear suddenly. It could begin gradually. A slight change in air quality, a rise in respiratory irritation, a crop yield slightly lower than expected, more infections than usual, a strange residue in pipes, a small increase in maintenance failures, a pattern no one notices until it is widespread. The ship would need constant observation. Science would not be optional aboard a generation ship. It would be survival culture. Children might grow up learning biology not as a school subject, but as a language of safety. They would know why mold matters, why water chemistry matters, why seeds matter, why air composition matters, why waste is not simply waste. Waste, in fact, would become one of the most important resources aboard. On Earth, civilizations often hide waste away. Trash leaves the house, sewage disappears underground, industrial byproducts move somewhere else. We live with the illusion of away. On a generation ship, there is no away. Everything remains inside the system unless transformed. Human waste becomes fertilizer, chemicals, water, or energy. Plant waste becomes compost or feedstock. Broken materials become raw material. Old machines become spare parts. Airborne particles are filtered and studied. Dead bodies, even, would raise profound cultural and practical questions. What does burial mean in a place with no soil? What does cremation mean when energy and air quality are precious? What does returning to nature mean inside a machine? A generation ship would need rituals for death that respect grief while recognizing the closed reality of matter. The atoms of the dead may need to re-enter the life system. This could be beautiful, horrifying, sacred, or unbearable depending on the culture that develops. On Earth, we say people return to the Earth. On a generation ship, they may return to the ship, to its gardens, its air, its water, its next generation. Death would not remove someone from the system. It would transform them within it. That thought alone shows how deeply human culture would change between stars. Biology aboard a generation ship would erase many illusions. It would remind everyone that life is circulation, that bodies are temporary arrangements of matter, that waste and food, breath and plant, water and blood, death and growth are all connected. Earth hides this connection with size. The ship would reveal it through limitation, and perhaps, over time, the people aboard would develop a different kind of reverence for life. Not sentimental, but practical and spiritual at once. A leaf would not just be a leaf, it would be oxygen, food, humidity, beauty, and psychological comfort. A tank of algae would not just be green liquid, it would be part of breathing. A seed would not just be potential food, it would be inheritance. Seeds might become sacred objects. Libraries of genetic material could be treated like temples. Frozen embryos, preserved DNA, crop varieties, microbial cultures, medicinal plants, all of them would represent futures that might be needed one day. A generation ship would carry not just current life, but possible life. The biological archive could decide whether the ship survives disease, famine, adaptation, or arrival. And this creates another terrifying responsibility. What life deserves to be carried? Which plants? Which animals? Which microbes? Which genetic lines? Which extinct species, if any, should be preserved? Which parts of Earth's biosphere can fit inside the Ark? A generation ship cannot carry all of Earth, so choosing what to carry becomes a kind of judgment over life itself. That choice would haunt the mission, because every species left behind is a door closed. Every missing organism may become important later. Every simplified ecosystem may become more fragile than expected. Earth's life is interconnected in ways we do not fully understand. Building a smaller version of it may reveal dependencies we never knew existed. This is the arrogance and tragedy of generation ships. They would try to miniaturize a planet before we truly understand the planet, and yet they may be the only way for human life to cross the stars slowly. So the ship would move onward, carrying its fragile biology through darkness. Inside, children would breathe air made by systems their ancestors designed. Plants would turn light into food beneath artificial suns. Microbes would live unseen in water, soil, skin, and pipes. Doctors would study bodies adapting to a world without Earth. Engineers would watch temperature, pressure, humidity, and chemistry. Teachers would explain that nothing is separate. Outside, the universe would remain silent. No forests, no oceans, no bacteria-rich soil, no rain, no wild winds carrying pollen across continents. Only the ship, a closed garden in the dark. And perhaps that is the deepest biological truth of generation ships. They are not simply about surviving distance. They are about asking whether life from Earth can remain alive, diverse, healthy, and human after centuries without Earth. Because reaching another star is not enough. The ship must arrive with people who can still live, seeds that can still grow, knowledge that still works, bodies that can still adapt, a culture that still understands what life requires. If any of those fail, the mission fails long before the destination appears, and somewhere between the stars the generation ship would continue its quiet experiment. Not only in propulsion, not only in technology, but in life itself. A tiny artificial biosphere carrying warmth, breath, memory, hunger, sickness, birth, death, and hope across an ocean where nothing natural is waiting to help it survive. The fourth terrifying truth about generation ships is that the danger outside the ship may be almost invisible. When people imagine interstellar travel, they often picture a dark, empty road between stars. A huge vessel moves forward in silence, surrounded by beautiful points of light. There are no storms, no mountains, no oceans, no atmosphere, no traffic, no obvious obstacles. It looks calm. But that calm is deceptive. Interstellar space is not a road. It is an ancient wilderness made of distance, radiation, dust, particles, magnetic fields, and darkness. It may look empty to human eyes, but emptiness at high speed becomes dangerous in ways our instincts are not built to understand. On Earth, danger usually has shape: a cliff, a wave, a fire, a storm, an animal, a collapsing building, a speeding vehicle. In deep space, danger may be a dust grain, something so small you could barely see it. Something that would mean almost nothing on Earth can become deadly when a spacecraft is moving fast enough. A generation ship travelling between stars cannot crawl slowly forever. If it moves too slowly, the journey may take tens of thousands of years. If it moves faster, the journey becomes more realistic, but the danger rises sharply. Because speed changes everything. A tiny particle in space, striking a ship at extreme velocity, does not behave like dust. It behaves like a bullet, or worse. It can release enormous energy on impact. It can damage shielding, puncture outer layers, destroy sensors, or slowly weaken protective surfaces over centuries. And the ship cannot simply stop. It cannot pull into a repair station. It cannot wait for rescue. It cannot avoid every particle across trillions of kilometers. It must be built to survive the invisible. This means the front of a generation ship may need to be one of the most protected structures ever created. Layers of shielding, sacrificial material, detection systems, magnetic or plasma defenses perhaps, thick barriers placed far ahead of the living sections, maybe even clouds of protective particles released in front of the ship to absorb impacts before they reach the main hull. The ship would need a face designed to be wounded, a shield that expects damage, a shield that loses pieces of itself so the civilization behind it can continue breathing. That is a strange idea. The front of the vessel becomes the place where the universe touches humanity first. Behind it may be gardens, homes, schools, sleeping quarters, archives, and children. Ahead of it, dust moving through darkness. Between them, metal and engineering. Every impact would be a reminder that space is not empty enough to be safe. Then there is radiation. Earth protects life with an atmosphere and magnetic field. We live beneath layers of natural shielding without feeling them. Cosmic rays and solar particles are filtered, deflected, absorbed, or weakened before they reach the surface. A generation ship leaving the solar system would gradually move away from the familiar protections of home. It would travel through a region where high-energy particles can pass through matter, damage electronics, alter materials, and harm living tissue. Radiation is frightening because it is invisible. It does not need to break the window. It does not need to shake the ship. It passes through silently, particle by particle, year after year. For a short mission, radiation exposure can be measured and managed. For a journey lasting centuries, the problem becomes enormous. The ship would need shielding not just for one crew, but for every generation born inside it. Sleeping areas, medical centers, nurseries, farms, water reserves, and command systems may need to be placed deep within protected zones. Water itself might become part of the shielding. Fuel tanks, storage areas, and structural mass could be arranged to protect the living core. The safest place may be near the center. The deeper you go inside the ship, the more protected you are. This could shape the entire architecture of the vessel. The outer layers become armor and machinery. The middle layers become industry, storage, and maintenance. The inner layers become life. A city built like a fortress against particles. People may grow up knowing that some areas of the ship are safer than others. Some workers may spend more time near the exterior, maintaining shields, sensors, engines, and communication systems. Their work may carry higher exposure. Their health may need careful monitoring. Their jobs may become respected, feared, or avoided. Even architecture becomes destiny. Where you live inside the ship may influence how much radiation you receive, how safe your family feels, and how close you are to the cold, dangerous skin of the vessel. But radiation is not only a medical problem, it is a memory problem for machines. Electronics do not last forever in deep space. Charged particles can corrupt data, damage circuits, flip bits in computer memory, degrade solar panels if the ship uses them near stars, and slowly weaken sensitive instruments. A generation ship would depend on computers for navigation, life support, agriculture, education, archives, manufacturing, medicine, and almost every layer of survival. So the ship would need systems that can fail safely. multiple computers, redundant memory, self-checking code, physical archives, analog backups, human-readable manuals, repairable hardware, manufacturing capability for replacement parts, and above all, people who understand the systems deeply enough to rebuild them. This may become one of the hardest challenges of the entire mission. A generation ship cannot depend only on sealed technology from Earth. Because centuries are too long, the machines will age, the software will become ancient, the original designers will be gone. The manufacturing methods may be forgotten unless they are preserved deliberately. Specialized components may fail, tools may break, materials may run out. The ship must not only carry technology, it must carry the ability to recreate technology. That is much harder. A modern civilization on Earth depends on massive supply chains. A single computer chip may involve minerals mined in one country, factories in another, chemicals from another, machines built by specialized industries, global logistics, expert labor, precision tools, and thousands of hidden steps. A generation ship cannot bring the entire industrial world in its original form. It must simplify, it must standardize, it must design systems for repair, not replacement. It must avoid technologies that are too delicate to reproduce. It must carry raw materials and recycling systems. It must turn broken things back into useful things again. Every object aboard would need a future. A broken panel becomes material. A worn tool becomes metal stock. An outdated device becomes parts. A failed machine becomes a lesson. Waste would be failure only if nothing can be recovered from it. This changes the meaning of technology. On Earth, we often build things to be replaced quickly. We throw away devices after a few years. We upgrade, discard, consume, and depend on factories far away to create more. A generation ship could not live that way. It would need a culture of repair so deep that maintenance becomes almost sacred. A child might grow up learning how to take apart a pump before learning certain abstract histories. A teenager might apprentice in recycling systems, thermal control, or structural inspection. Engineers would not be distant specialists. They would be guardians of continuity. Because if the ship forgets how to repair itself, the mission is already dying. The engines create another haunting problem. A generation ship must move across distances so vast that ordinary propulsion feels almost helpless. Chemical rockets, powerful enough to leave Earth, are not enough for fast interstellar travel. Future designs may imagine nuclear fusion, antimatter, laser sails, electric propulsion, or other advanced systems far beyond what we routinely use today. But no matter the method, the engine must do something extraordinary. It must accelerate a world, not a small probe, not a capsule, not a satellite, a world filled with people, shielding, farms, water, factories, habitats, and centuries of survival equipment. The mass would be enormous, and every kilogram matters. If the ship is too heavy, it becomes harder to accelerate. If it is too light, it may lack shielding, redundancy, or living space. If it carries too much fuel, it becomes even heavier. If it carries too little, it may never reach the needed speed or slow down at the destination. This is the cruel mathematics of spaceflight. A generation ship must be heavy enough to survive, but light enough to move. It must be a city, but also a vehicle. Those two purposes fight each other. A city wants space, comfort, redundancy, storage, beauty, gardens, thick walls, and room for growth. A spacecraft wants efficiency, low mass, simplicity, strength, and precision. A generation ship must somehow be both, and the engine cannot only start the journey, it must also preserve the possibility of arrival. That means slowing down. This is often forgotten. It is not enough to travel toward another star. A ship moving extremely fast must decelerate when it arrives, or it will simply fly through the system like a bullet, passing the destination it spent centuries trying to reach. Slowing down may require as much planning as speeding up. The ship may need fuel reserved for deceleration, or it may use magnetic sails, stellar radiation, gravity assists, or interaction with the target star's environment. But every method carries uncertainty. What if the deceleration system fails after centuries of travel? What if the ship arrives too fast? What if the target system is different from what was expected? Imagine generations living and dying to reach a star, only for the ship to cross the system too quickly to settle there. The planet appears, grows larger, shows clouds, oceans, or continents, then begins to shrink behind them. Not because the mission lacked courage, because it could not stop. That may be one of the most devastating failures imaginable, to reach the stars and still not arrive. Navigation across interstellar distances is another problem that feels almost mythical. On Earth, navigation uses landmarks, maps, signals, satellites, stars, and instruments. In the solar system, spacecraft can use radio tracking from Earth, star trackers, gyroscopes, and gravitational calculations. But a generation ship would eventually be far beyond easy guidance. Earth signals would weaken with distance. Communication delays would stretch from years to decades. The ship would need to navigate autonomously, using stars, pulsars, onboard measurements, and long-term calculations. The destination star would be moving. The ship would be moving. The galaxy itself is dynamic. Tiny errors could grow across centuries. A small mistake made early in the journey may not reveal its full consequence until generations later. This is terrifying because the people who made the mistake may be dead long before the cost appears. A navigation error becomes inherited. The final generation may suffer from a calculation made by ancestors who believed everything was correct. The ship would need constant correction, but corrections require energy. Too many corrections waste resources. Too few allow errors to grow. The path must be guarded like a living thing. And then there is communication with Earth. At first, messages may still feel meaningful. The ship leaves the solar system, receives transmissions, sends updates, shares discoveries, hears music, news, and voices from the planet behind it. But as years stretch into decades, communication becomes stranger. A message may take years to arrive, then years for the answer to return. Eventually, Earth becomes less like a conversation partner and more like a distant archive. The ship may receive updates from a world already changed by the time the message arrives. Earth may receive reports from people who are already older or gone by the time anyone listens. Communication becomes time travel made of radio waves. This could protect the ship in one way. Earth could continue sending knowledge, discoveries, improved science, cultural records, warnings, and support. But Earth could not rescue the ship. It could not guide it minute by minute. It could not intervene quickly in crisis. The ship must become independent, and independence is lonely. A generation ship may also outlive the civilization that launched it. That possibility is rarely spoken about, but it matters. What if Earth changes so dramatically that it stops caring? What if the political systems that funded the mission disappear? What if records are lost, What if humanity on Earth suffers catastrophe? What if Earth advances so much that the generation ship becomes obsolete? What if faster ships are built later and arrive first? This last possibility is especially haunting. A generation ship may leave Earth using the best technology of its time, expecting a journey of centuries. But later, Earth may develop faster propulsion. A newer mission launched generations afterward could overtake the older ship and reach the destination first. The original travellers and their descendants would have spent centuries inside a vessel that history surpassed. How would that feel? To be born into sacrifice, only to learn that the mission is no longer necessary. Would Earth recall them? Would faster ships try to rescue them? Would the generation ship accept help? Would its people feel betrayed, relieved, or robbed of meaning? Progress itself could become a threat to the mission's purpose. The ship might be both humanity's greatest achievement and a relic before it arrives. This is one of the strange tragedies of long-duration travel. The longer the journey lasts, the more likely the world behind it changes beyond prediction. The generation ship must travel not only through space, but through uncertainty. It cannot know what Earth will become. It cannot know what technology will emerge. It cannot know whether the destination remains the best choice. It cannot know whether the people aboard will still believe in the journey. Every century adds more unknowns, and yet the ship must keep moving. This is what makes the engineering of a generation ship different from any other machine. Most machines are built for tasks. A generation ship must be built for history. It must survive impacts, radiation, material fatigue, power decline, system failures, cultural changes, biological shifts, navigation challenges, and the slow erosion of meaning. It must be repairable by people who never met its builders. It must carry instructions clear enough to survive language change. It must protect knowledge from corruption, myth, censorship, accident, and decay. Even the archives must be designed for centuries. Digital storage may fail. Languages may evolve. Symbols may change. Scientific assumptions may be misunderstood. Important warnings may become ritual phrases without true comprehension. The ship may need information carved, printed, encoded, duplicated, taught orally, preserved in stories, and embedded into daily practice. The most important knowledge cannot sit only in a database. It must live in people, because if the database fails, someone must still know how to keep the air moving. There is an old human fear hidden here, the fear of forgetting how the world works. On Earth, civilizations have lost technologies before. Buildings remain after their methods are forgotten. Texts survive after languages vanish. Tools are found without their original meaning. On a generation ship, such forgetting could be fatal. A valve is not just a valve if nobody remembers why it matters. A warning sign is useless if the language changes. A restricted zone becomes dangerous if its purpose turns into legend. A maintenance ritual becomes empty if people repeat the steps without understanding the principle. The ship must prevent knowledge from becoming superstition. But over centuries, superstition may grow naturally around survival systems. The engine room may become a sacred place. The archives may become holy. The original mission planners may become almost mythic. Technical procedures may become ceremonies. Emergency drills may become cultural festivals. This is not necessarily bad. Ritual can preserve behavior when understanding fades. But ritual without understanding is fragile. If conditions change, people must know why the ritual exists. The ship needs both reverence and reason. That is a hard combination to maintain. The outer hull would keep taking impacts, the radiation shielding would keep absorbing damage, the engines would keep aging, the archives would keep needing protection, the people would keep changing, the destination would keep approaching slowly, almost impossibly slowly, and through all of it, the ship must remain coherent, not perfect. No system lasting centuries can remain perfect. It must be resilient. It must bend without breaking. It must adapt without losing itself. It must repair without consuming too much. It must allow human life to change while keeping the mission alive. This may be the true engineering challenge, not building a ship that never fails, building a ship that can survive failure. A generation ship must expect damage, expect mistakes, expect cultural shifts, expect technological decay, expect emergency, expect doubt. It must be designed not as a flawless machine, but as a civilization capable of recovering. That is far more difficult. A flawless machine only has to work. A resilient world must learn. And maybe this is why generation ships feel both terrifying and beautiful. They represent the ultimate test of whether humans can build something worthy of time. Not just powerful enough to launch, not just advanced enough to impress, not just large enough to carry a population, but wise enough to endure centuries of reality. A generation ship would move through darkness with its shield facing the unknown, its engines pushing against impossible distance, its archives guarding memory, its people guarding meaning, and its systems fighting decay. Outside, there would be no mercy, no road, no harbour, no rescue, no guarantee that the destination will welcome them. Only particles, radiation, silence, and stars. Inside, a civilization would continue because it must, and every day, whether anyone thinks about it or not, the ship would be answering one question. Can a human-made world survive long enough to cross a universe that was never built for worlds like this? The fifth terrifying truth about generation ships is that arrival may not feel like salvation. For centuries, the destination would exist as a promise, a star ahead, a planet waiting in the dark, a future world where children might finally stand under a natural sky again. Everything inside the ship would be shaped by that promise. Schools would teach it, archives would preserve it, maps would show it, ceremonies might mark each fraction of distance crossed. Families would speak of it when life aboard the ship felt too narrow, too repetitive, too heavy. One day, they would say, we will arrive. One day the walls will open. One day the journey will be over. One day humanity will touch another world. But what if arrival is not an ending? What if arrival is only the beginning of a new danger? This is the part of interstellar travel that sounds simple from far away. We imagine the generation ship crossing the darkness, reaching a new star, finding a planet, entering orbit and beginning a new civilization. But a planet is not automatically a home. A planet is a world with its own rules. Its gravity may be wrong, its air may be toxic, its surface may be unstable, its weather may be violent, its oceans may be poisonous, its soil may be chemically hostile, its star may flare unpredictably, its magnetic field may be weak, its days may be too long, too short, too hot, or too cold. From Earth, telescopes may suggest hope, a planet in the right orbit, a possible atmosphere, a possible ocean, a possible temperature range, but possible is not enough. The people aboard the generation ship would need certainty, and certainty may not arrive until they are already there. That is terrifying, Because after centuries of travel, there may be no easy second choice. The ship cannot simply turn around and try again. Its fuel, systems, population, culture, and patience may already be stretched to their limits. The journey itself may have aged the vessel. The destination may not be perfect, but it may be the only world within reach. So the final generations may face a decision no human society has ever faced. Do they settle on a dangerous planet because it is the planet their ancestors chose? Or do they remain aboard the ship and continue searching, knowing that the ship may not survive another long journey? This could become the most painful moment in the entire mission. For hundreds of years, arrival was treated as the answer. Then the answer appears, and it becomes a question. Imagine the first detailed images of the planet reaching the ship's population. At first, there is wonder. The world appears beneath clouds, rotating slowly under alien sunlight. It has colour, shape, weather, maybe continents, maybe ice caps, maybe oceans reflecting the star. For people born inside metal walls, even a hostile planet might look impossibly beautiful. A real horizon, a real sky, a place larger than the ship. People would gather in public halls, observation chambers, schools, homes and gardens to watch the images. Some would cry, some would fall silent, some would laugh with disbelief. For the first time in living memory, the destination would no longer be a lesson or a myth. It would be visible. But then the data would deepen. Atmospheric analysis, radiation levels, surface chemistry, temperature cycles, storm systems, gravity measurements, toxic compounds, biological markers if any, landing hazards, water availability, geological activity. The romance would begin to meet reality. A planet that looked blue from space might have oceans too acidic to touch. A greenish surface might not be vegetation at all, but minerals or chemical deposits. Clouds might hide storms powerful enough to tear apart landing craft. A breathable-looking atmosphere might contain gases that slowly damage human lungs. A beautiful world might have microbes dangerous to Earth life. Or worse, Earth life might be dangerous to it. This introduces one of the deepest moral problems of interstellar settlement. What if the planet already has life? Not intelligent civilizations, not forests like Earth, not animals moving across open plains, maybe only microbes, tiny living systems in soil, ice, oceans, or underground water. Would humans have the right to land? A generation ship would carry Earth biology everywhere it goes. Humans, bacteria, plants, fungi, insects, food systems, waste systems, and microbial companions. Even with strict containment, total sterilization would be impossible. To colonize a living planet might mean contaminating it forever. A world that spent billions of years developing its own biology could be changed by one human mission. And the people aboard the ship would have to decide whether their survival justifies that risk. This is not an easy question. If they refuse to land, their own civilization may fail. If they land, they may damage a second origin of life. That choice would weigh heavily on them, because by then they would not be explorers from a comfortable Earth with options. They would be descendants of a journey. Their ancestors gave everything for this moment. Their children need a future. Their ship may be aging. Their resources may be limited. Ethics becomes harder when survival is involved. And this is where generation ships become more than science fiction. They force humanity to ask what kind of species we want to be when we are desperate. Would we protect alien life if it blocked our future? Would we preserve a fragile ecosystem if our own people needed land? Would we study from orbit and risk extinction aboard the ship? Or would we descend and hope the planet can survive us? A planet with life would not be empty land. It would be a discovery so profound that it could change the meaning of humanity forever. But for the generation ship, it might also be a locked door. Even a lifeless planet would not be easy. Landing thousands or millions of people is not simple. The ship itself may be too large to land. It might need smaller vessels, orbital stations, surface modules, cargo systems, and years of preparation. The first landing teams would not be stepping into a finished home. They would be entering an unknown environment where every movement must be planned. They would test the air, test the ground, test the water, build shelters, deploy power systems, protect against radiation, search for resources, grow the first crops, prepare emergency return routes. But return to what? The ship. The same ship some people may already be tired of. The same ship others may now see as safer than the planet. The same ship that carried them across centuries and may still be the only stable world they know. This creates another strange possibility. The population may divide. Some may want to settle the planet immediately, believing that the mission must be completed. Some may want to study it for decades before risking lives. Some may want to remain permanently in orbit. Some may want to modify the planet slowly. Some may want to continue traveling. Some may believe the ship itself is the true home, and the planet is an unnecessary danger. Arrival may not unite the civilization. It may split it. The people aboard would not be the same as the people who launched from Earth. They would have their own history, politics, fears, beliefs, and attachments. To them, the ship is not only transportation, it is birthplace, home, ancestor, and world. Leaving it might feel like betrayal. For others, refusing the planet might feel like betrayal. The final generation could become trapped between two sacred things, the mission they inherited and the home they actually know. This is the emotional cruelty of a generation ship. It creates people for a destination, but raises them inside a vessel. By the time the destination arrives, the vessel may have already become their Earth, and planets are not gentle with newcomers. Even if the target world is habitable in broad terms, humans may struggle. Gravity may be slightly higher or lower than expected. A higher gravity world could make movement exhausting for bodies adapted to ship life. A lower gravity world might create long-term health problems. The day length might disrupt sleep. The light from the star might feel strange to eyes and plants. The atmosphere might require breathing support. The soil might lack nutrients familiar to Earth crops. The first settlers might discover that survival outside the ship still requires closed habitats. After centuries of dreaming about open land, they may find themselves building domes, tunnels, sealed farms, and pressure-controlled settlements. The walls may not disappear. They may simply move from the ship to the surface. That could be psychologically devastating. Imagine being raised on stories of arrival as liberation, only to discover that the new planet still cannot be touched freely. You can see mountains, but not walk among them without protection. You can see clouds, but not breathe the air safely. You can see oceans, but not drink from them. You can see a horizon, but still live behind sealed doors. The journey ends, but confinement continues. This is why the myth of a new Earth may be dangerous. There may be no second Earth. There may only be worlds that are better or worse than expected, each demanding compromise, adaptation, and sacrifice. A generation ship may not deliver humans to paradise. It may deliver them to work, hard, dangerous, uncertain work, the work of turning arrival into survival, and if the planet truly is suitable, another problem begins. The ship's society must transform from a closed artificial civilization into a planetary one. That sounds wonderful, but it may be deeply unstable. For centuries, everything aboard the ship was controlled because it had to be. Resources were counted, berths were planned, air was monitored, space was assigned, education served survival, movement happened within designed limits, culture adapted to enclosure. A planet changes all of that. Suddenly there is land, distance, weather, separate settlements, new resources, new dangers, new freedoms. People who lived under ship discipline may not know how to handle planetary openness. Others may embrace it too quickly. Groups may separate. Authority may weaken. Old laws may no longer fit. New conflicts may emerge over land, settlement sites, resources, leadership, and the meaning of the mission after arrival. A ship can be governed centrally because it is one object. A planet cannot be governed the same way forever. The society would need to reinvent itself. And reinvention, after centuries of controlled survival, could be dangerous. Some people may want to preserve ship culture exactly. Some may want to abandon it. Some may treat the planet as sacred. Some may treat it as raw material. Some may want to remember Earth. Others may want to forget both Earth and the ship and begin something entirely new. Arrival would create identity shock. Who are they now? Earth humans? Ship-born humans? The first people of a new world? A continuation of Earth civilization? Or something separate? The answer would not be automatic. It would be fought over in language, education, rituals, politics, architecture, and memory. The first city on the new planet might become the center of this struggle. Would it be named after Earth? After the ship? After the destination star? After the first child born after arrival? Would its buildings imitate Earth landscapes, ship corridors, or something completely new? Even design would carry meaning. A window facing the alien sunrise might become a symbol. A preserved section of the ship might become a museum. A garden grown from Earth seeds might become a holy place. The first footprint might become less important than the first breath taken without fear, if that ever becomes possible. But what if the ship cannot be abandoned? The generation ship may remain in orbit as a permanent station. It may become a guardian, a warehouse, a factory, a government centre, or a relic. It may continue to house people while surface settlements develop slowly. In that case, humanity's new civilization begins divided between sky and ground. Those who live on the planet may see themselves as the future. Those who remain aboard may see themselves as protectors of the original mission. Over time, differences could grow. Different gravity, different jobs, different risks, different cultures. The journey to escape one planet may end by creating a society split between another planet and the machine that brought them there. And somewhere in all of this, Earth would remain distant. By the time the ship arrives, Earth may be centuries behind in communication, or far beyond what anyone aboard can truly understand. News from the old world may still arrive, but it would be ancient by the time it reaches them. Earth might send congratulations that arrive decades after landing. The new world might send a reply that Earth receives long after the first settlers are gone. Even success would be lonely. There would be no real-time celebration between worlds, no shared moment across the stars, no immediate welcome from the species that launched them. The colony would stand under an alien sun, knowing that its greatest achievement cannot be fully witnessed by home. This may be one of the saddest truths about interstellar travel. The farther humanity spreads, the less it can remain one story happening at the same time. Each star becomes its own present. Each world lives in its own delay. The generation ship may arrive, but the people who sent it are long gone. The descendants who land may know Earth only as a signal from the past. Their first sunrise on the new world may be the greatest moment in their history, and yet Earth will not know it for years, maybe decades, maybe longer. So arrival is not reunion. It is separation made permanent, and perhaps, after all the fear, that is also where the beauty begins. Because if they survive, if they land, if they grow food, protect their children, adapt to the planet, and build a life under another star, then humanity has done something extraordinary. It has moved life across the dark, not as a probe, not as a message, not as a signal, but as living memory. A generation ship would not simply deliver people. It would deliver Earth's biology, culture, sorrow, courage, language, science, and longing to a place where none of it existed before. The first settlement may be fragile. The first years may be brutal. The first harvest may fail. The first storms may terrify them. The first deaths on the new world may feel unbearable. But one day, perhaps, a child born on that planet will step outside a habitat and look up at the sky. They will see a star that is not the sun. They may know the old stories. They may know that their ancestors came from a blue planet so distant it is no longer visible. They may know that generations lived and died inside a ship so they could stand there. To that child, Earth will not be home. The ship may not be home either. This new world will be home, and that is when the generation ship's mission truly ends. Not when it reaches orbit. Not when the first lander touches ground. Not when the first habitat is built. But when someone is born who no longer feels like a traveller, someone who belongs to the destination. The terrifying reality of generation ships is that success requires loss. To arrive at another star, humanity may have to lose Earth as home, then lose the ship as home, then become something new on a world that was once only a promise. The journey would not preserve humanity unchanged. It would transform it, and maybe that transformation is the real price of the stars. Not just time, not just distance, not just engineering, not just sacrifice, but identity. A generation ship begins as a way to carry humans to another world, but if it succeeds, the people who arrive may no longer be the same kind of humans who left. The sixth terrifying truth about generation ships is that the most important people aboard may never see either world. Not Earth, not the destination. They would be born in the middle, between stars, between histories, between promises. They would open their eyes inside a ship already far from the sun, moving toward a world still too distant to feel real. They would inherit a sky made of metal, a day made by lighting systems, a society built around maintenance, and a mission older than they are. Their ancestors chose the journey. Their descendants may finish it, but they themselves would live entirely inside the crossing. This may be the most haunting generation of all. The middle generations, the people who do not leave, the people who do not arrive, the people whose entire lives are spent preserving a future they will never touch. From the outside they may sound like heroes, a civilization sacrificing itself across time, so that human life can reach another star. But from the inside, daily life may feel far less poetic. They would wake beneath artificial morning, walk through corridors their grandparents also walked, eat food grown under lamps, study a planet they may never see, maintain systems designed before they were born, and sleep under the quiet knowledge that the ship is moving, always moving, towards something that belongs to someone else's lifetime. This creates a strange kind of existence, a life with purpose but no completion. On Earth, people often build for the future. Parents raise children, teachers educate students, builders create cities they may not live to see fully changed. Scientists work on discoveries that may help later generations, but they still live inside a world full of immediate rewards. They see seasons change, they travel, they choose places, they stand under open sky, they belong to a planet that feels complete even when their work is unfinished. The middle generations of a starship would not have that. Their entire world would be unfinished by design. The ship is not the destination. The journey is not over. The promised planet is not yet real. Earth is no longer reachable as home. So what does a person build a life around when everything around them is temporary, but temporary for centuries? That question could shape the deepest psychology of the ship. The first generation would carry the trauma of departure. The final generation would carry the shock of arrival. But the middle generations would carry something quieter and perhaps more difficult. Continuation. They would need to continue without the emotional fire of leaving Earth. They would need to continue without the reward of reaching another world. They would need to continue because stopping would betray the dead and endanger the unborn. That is a heavy burden to place on ordinary lives, and most lives are ordinary, even inside extraordinary missions. Not everyone aboard a generation ship would be a visionary. Not everyone would wake up thinking about destiny. People would still worry about relationships, work, loneliness, status, family, boredom, fear, and small personal dreams. Someone would want to become a musician. Someone would want more privacy. Someone would dislike their assigned work. Someone would fall in love with the wrong person. Someone would feel trapped by expectations. Someone would question the old mission speeches. Someone would wonder whether their life truly belongs to them. This is what makes a generation ship so human. It cannot be operated by symbols. It must be lived in by people, and people do not remain inspired forever just because a mission is important. The middle generations may be taught from childhood that their lives matter because they protect arrival. But some of them may quietly ask, what about now? What about this life, this body, this time, this small world of walls and systems and recycled air? Are we allowed to live for ourselves, or only for people who do not exist yet? That question could become dangerous, because a society cannot survive for centuries if every person feels like a tool for the future. It must give people a reason to love the present. The ship cannot be only a bridge. It must also be a home. So the designers and leaders of a generation ship would face a delicate challenge. They would need to create a culture where people understand the long mission but do not feel crushed by it. There would need to be festivals, art, music, games, private rituals, public ceremonies, places for quiet, places for beauty, stories that are not only about survival, education that teaches not only function, but wonder. Because a civilization that only survives mechanically may eventually become emotionally empty. And emotional emptiness can be fatal. A ship can have perfect oxygen levels and still lose its soul. This may sound soft compared with the engines, radiation, and food supply, but it is not. A society that loses meaning stops caring. A society that stops caring stops maintaining. And a ship that is not maintained eventually dies. So beauty itself becomes survival. A painting on a wall, a song sung in a garden, a child's story about the stars, a preserved recording of ocean waves, a small ceremony when a new generation is born, a quiet room where people can look outward and remember that the darkness is not only a prison, but also the road. These things may keep the ship human, but even beauty would change over time. The art of the middle generations would not be earth art exactly. It would come from ship life. Their poems may speak of ventilation hums, curved floors, artificial dawns, old navigation lights, hydroponic rain, and the view of stars through thick glass. Their music may imitate machine rhythms. Their architecture may celebrate pressure doors and garden domes. Their myths may center on the first departure, the unseen planet ahead, and the long patience of those in between. A new culture would emerge, not fully Earth, not yet planetary, ship-born. And this culture may begin to value things differently from Earth humans. On Earth, wilderness is freedom. On the ship, wilderness may be frightening because uncontrolled systems mean danger. On Earth, open space is beautiful. On the ship, open space may feel wasteful unless carefully justified. On Earth, silence can be peaceful. On the ship, silence may be alarming if it means a machine has stopped. On Earth, darkness can be restful. On the ship, darkness may be associated with power failures, emergency lighting, and fear. Their emotional language would be shaped by the vessel. A phrase like good air might become a blessing. A phrase like steady pressure might mean safety. A phrase like clear water might carry the emotional weight that good harvest once carried for farming cultures on Earth. Every civilization grows around what it depends on. A desert culture respects water. A polar culture respects warmth. A seafaring culture respects weather and navigation. A generation ship culture would respect systems. This could create a society that is careful, disciplined, and deeply aware of interdependence. But it could also create anxiety. If children grow up knowing that a broken system can threaten everyone, fear may become part of their emotional education. They may learn early that careless behavior is not just personal, it can harm the whole ship. A door left open, a tool misplaced, a contamination ignored, a rule broken in a restricted area. Small mistakes can carry enormous meaning. This may produce responsible citizens, or it may produce people who feel watched by survival itself. The middle generations may live with a constant invisible pressure. Do not be the weak link in a chain that began before you and must continue after you. That is a difficult way to be human. And then there is boredom. Not ordinary boredom, but historical boredom. The ship's path may take centuries. Many days may pass without visible change. The stars outside may look almost fixed. The destination may grow brighter so slowly that no single lifetime can feel the progress clearly. Progress would be measured by instruments, not by the human eye. This can be psychologically strange. On Earth, movement feels real because landscapes change. A journey has roads, cities, weather, smells, voices, and arrival points. Even a long voyage across an ocean eventually shows different skies, different ports, different coastlines. Between stars, the view may remain almost the same for generations. A child could look through an observation window at age 5 then again at age 50, and feel that nothing outside has changed. The ship is moving at tremendous speed, but emotionally it may feel still. A civilization could begin to feel trapped not because it is not moving, but because movement is too vast to be felt. To fight this, the ship may create artificial milestones, distance days, course correction ceremonies, archive anniversaries, generational handovers, simulated views of the destination based on updated data, celebrations when the ship crosses invisible boundaries in space. Humans need milestones. Without them, time becomes shapeless, and shapeless time can become heavy. The middle generations would need ways to feel that their lives have arcs, not just maintenance schedules. A child becomes adult, an apprentice becomes master, a garden is planted and harvested, a song is written and remembered, a section of the ship is repaired, a new habitat opens, a family line continues, a scientific observation is made, a personal dream is completed. The mission may be centuries long, but human life still needs smaller meanings. This is another truth often forgotten in grand visions. A person cannot live inside humanity's destiny every day. They need breakfast, friendship, rest, laughter, privacy, a place to cry, a reason to wake up tomorrow. The generation ship must provide all of this, or its people will suffer, and suffering can accumulate. Imagine a teenager born in the middle of the voyage. They did not ask for the mission. They know the ship's rules. They know the destination is important. They know Earth is gone beyond any possible personal experience. They know the adults expect discipline, but they feel restless. They want a horizon that is not artificial. They want to run farther than any corridor allows. They want to see a storm that was not programmed. They want to open a door without needing permission from pressure systems. They want to know what wind feels like. How does a society answer that longing? A simulation can help. A virtual ocean can be beautiful. A soundscape of forests can calm the mind. A dome with plants can soften the walls. But the teenager may know it is not real, and the knowledge may hurt. There may be a kind of grief unique to shipborne humans, grief for things they never had. Grief for Earth without memory of Earth. Grief for oceans known only through lessons. Grief for skies they can describe scientifically but never stand beneath. Grief for animals they know from preserved videos, not from touch. Grief for a planet that is part of their ancestry but not their life. This grief could become part of ship culture. Songs about the lost blue world, stories about rain, ceremonies where children first see real footage of Earth, rooms designed to imitate beaches, forests, mountains, or twilight. Old recordings played like sacred echoes. But there is a danger in making Earth too beautiful. If Earth becomes paradise in memory, the ship becomes a punishment by comparison. So the society may eventually change the story. Earth may be honoured but not idealised. The ship may be presented not as exile but as transformation. The middle generations may be taught that they are not unfortunate people trapped between worlds, but guardians of the crossing. That may be necessary, yet it also raises a question. Where is the line between meaning and propaganda? A generation ship would depend heavily on education, narrative, and shared belief. But those tools can preserve truth or distort it. Leaders might be tempted to simplify history to keep social order. They might hide certain failures from Earth. They might exaggerate the destination. They might turn doubt into taboo. If the mission becomes too sacred to question, the society becomes dangerous. Because real survival requires honest thinking. A ship cannot afford comforting lies if those lies prevent adaptation, but it also cannot afford endless cynicism. If too many people believe the mission is pointless, the ship weakens. So the culture must allow doubt without collapsing into despair. That may be one of the highest forms of civilization aboard a generation ship, the ability to question the mission and still protect the ship. To say, I do not know whether our ancestors were right, but I know we must keep each other alive. That sentence may be the moral center of the middle generations. They may not fully believe in the original dream. They may not feel Earth as home. They may not live to see arrival, but they can still care for the living world around them. The ship becomes worthy of care not only because of the destination, but because people are alive inside it now. This shift may save them. A society cannot survive only for the future. It must also honor the present. The gardens matter now. The children matter now. The water matters now. The songs matter now. The friendships matter now. The repairs matter now. The destination gives direction, but life gives meaning. And perhaps the middle generations would eventually understand something the launch generation could not. They would understand that the journey itself is not empty. It is a civilization. The centuries between stars are not dead time. They are filled with births, choices, discoveries, mistakes, memories, and love. People born there are not simply waiting for history to resume. They are history. This realization could transform the ship. Instead of seeing themselves as people trapped between two real worlds, they may begin to see the ship as a real world of its own, not a planet, not Earth, not the final destination, but a human world, valid because life is happening there. That does not erase the tragedy. It deepens it, because if the ship becomes a true home, then arrival will one day require leaving home again. The middle generations may spend their lives making the ship livable, meaningful, beautiful, and culturally rich. Then their descendants may be asked to abandon parts of it to settle a planet. The ship must be loved enough to survive, but not loved so much that arrival becomes impossible. That balance may be impossible to perfect. Still, the middle generations would keep going, not because every person is heroic, not because every person agrees, not because every day feels meaningful, but because the ship is alive and life asks to continue. Somewhere between stars, a teacher would explain old Earth to a classroom of children who have never felt sunlight on their skin. Somewhere, an engineer would repair a pump whose failure could threaten people not yet born. Somewhere, a musician would compose a song using the rhythm of the ship's engines. Somewhere, an old person would sit in an artificial garden and remember their own grandparents, speaking of grandparents who remembered Earth. Somewhere, a child would press a hand against a window and look at stars that seem motionless, not knowing whether to feel trapped or amazed, and outside the ship would continue moving. A tiny world crossing a darkness too large for one lifetime to understand. The terrifying reality of generation ships is not only that people may die before arrival, it is that entire generations may live meaningful, complete, painful, beautiful human lives inside a mission that is not meant for them to finish. They are the bridge, but they are also people, and if a generation ship is ever to reach another star, humanity must learn to honor the lives lived in the middle, not as sacrifices forgotten between departure and arrival, but as the very reason the journey remained human. In the end, the terrifying reality of generation ships is not only that they may take centuries to reach another star, it is that no one truly knows what will remain by the time they arrive. Not the ship, not the mission, not the people, not even the meaning of the journey. A generation ship begins as a promise made on Earth, a promise that humanity can survive beyond one planet, a promise that life can cross the darkness between stars, a promise that the future is worth carrying even when the destination is too far for any living person to see. But promises change when they are stretched across centuries. The first generation would leave with memory in their hearts. They would remember oceans, forests, sunlight, cities, rain, wind, and the open sky. They would know exactly what they gave up. But their children would inherit only the ship, and their children's children would inherit the mission without the memory that created it. Somewhere in the middle of the journey, Earth would stop being home and become history. The destination would stop being a place and become belief. The ship would stop being a vehicle and become a world. That transformation may be the true cost of reaching the stars, because a generation ship cannot simply transport humanity unchanged. It would reshape us. It would change how people understand freedom, family, work, death, childhood, nature, time, and purpose. It would create humans who know air as a system, water as inheritance, food as engineering, and the sky as something remembered through recordings. They would live beneath artificial dawns. They would grow gardens under controlled light. They would measure survival in oxygen levels, water purity, radiation exposure, crop cycles, and power reserves. To us that sounds like confinement. To them, it may simply be life. And that is both beautiful and frightening. Because if humans can adapt to a ship between stars, then humanity is more flexible than we imagine. But if we adapt too well, we may lose the very world we were trying to preserve. Earth may become a symbol, then a myth, then a name spoken in old ceremonies, a blue planet none of them have touched. And still, the ship would move forward, through dust, through radiation, through silence, through generations of doubt, through broken certainty, through messages from Earth that arrive too late, through the fear that the destination may not be safe, through the possibility that faster ships may already have passed them, through the knowledge that their ancestors made a choice they can never fully undo. This is what makes generation ships so haunting. They do not ask for one act of courage. They ask for courage to become a way of life. Not the courage of launch day when engines roar and the whole world watches, but the quieter courage of the 100th year, the 200th year, the generation that wakes up knowing it will not see Earth and will not see a rival, the courage to repair a machine whose builders are long dead, the courage to teach children a mission they did not choose, the courage to keep planting food under artificial suns, the courage to keep believing that tomorrow matters even when tomorrow belongs to someone else. And maybe that is the deepest question. Is it fair? Is it fair to send people into a future they cannot escape? Is it fair for children to be born inside a mission older than themselves? Is it fair to ask entire generations to live as a bridge between two worlds? There may never be a clean answer, because survival has always carried difficult choices. If humanity remains forever on Earth, we remain fragile. One planet, one atmosphere, one biosphere, one world carrying everything we are. But if we leave Earth, we carry that fragility with us in new forms, inside ships, inside habitats, inside closed ecosystems, inside societies that must not break. The stars do not offer safety, they offer possibility, and possibility always has a price. A generation ship would be one of the highest prices humanity could ever pay for a future. It would demand technology, patience, sacrifice, wisdom, and a kind of social maturity we have not yet proven we possess. Because building the ship may be easier than keeping the civilization inside it human. The engines must work, the farms must work, the air must circulate, the water must return, the archives must survive, the children must learn. The society must remain fair. The machine intelligence must not become a cage. The mission must adapt without losing itself. The people must remember enough of Earth to know where they came from, but love the ship enough to stay alive. And after all of that, after centuries of effort, arrival may still not be guaranteed. The planet may be wrong, the star may be dangerous, the ship may be too old, the society may divide, the people may decide not to land, or they may land and discover that the dream was not a paradise, but another struggle. A new world would not erase the journey, it would inherit it. Every city built under that alien sun would carry the memory of the ship. Every child born on the new planet would exist because others lived and died in transit. Every harvest, every home, every first sunrise would be built on generations who never saw the end. That is why a generation ship is not only a machine of exploration, it is a machine of memory. It carries the dead toward a future they will never enter. It carries the unborn toward a world they did not choose. It carries Earth into the dark, not as a planet, but as language, biology, culture, grief, knowledge, and hope. And perhaps one day, far from the sun, a child born on another world will look up at a different sky. They may see a star that is not ours. They may stand on ground no human ancestor ever touched. They may breathe air made safe by machines, or perhaps by the slow work of a new planet becoming home. They will hear stories of the ship, the long crossing, the artificial gardens, the generations in the middle, the silence from Earth, the fear of never arriving, the people who kept going anyway. To that child, the journey may feel ancient, almost impossible, but their life will be the answer to it. Because the true success of a generation ship is not arrival itself, it is belonging. When someone born under another star no longer feels like a visitor, when the destination becomes home, when the ship becomes history, when Earth becomes origin, when humanity continues, changed but alive, that is the dream and the terror. To reach the stars, we may have to accept the humans who arrive will not be the same humans who left. They will carry us, but they will not be us. Far behind them, Earth will remain a pale memory near an ordinary yellow star. Far ahead, unknown worlds will wait without promise. And between those two truths, the generation ship will continue through the darkness, carrying breath, water, gardens, machines, stories, children, questions, and the fragile flame of a species trying to outlive its birthplace. Not because the stars are kind, not because arrival is certain, but because somewhere inside humanity there is a strange and restless belief that even the longest night is worth crossing, if something alive can reach the other side.